Anybody else?
If I understand your question well, sir, so there is um, an advantage for the four owners for the stock, because if some any of them lost and another win, so there will be a balance in the loss. But if the one big owner lost, so that will be a big disaster. So if I understand the question well, of course.
No, that's a great. You definitely do. You're really good at this. Awesome. Um, I want you to handle my money now because you're good at this. Okay. There is a pro to having multiple, correct? And why do you think? And I'm speaking from a U.S. market as an employee in a company when we're working towards retirement, right? And money that we get taken out of our excuse excuse me, money that gets taken out of our paycheck to go to retirement, right? We use an external company that, like the Hartford or something. If you've ever really paid attention to your plan, what are they doing with your money? Where are they putting it? Are they taking a risk with your money and putting it in, we'll say, one stock? Let's say again, are they taking your money, putting it into one stock like Amazon? Or are they going to take it and put it in multiple stocks to create, as Noron, as you were saying, that balance, right? Okay. Same
Sir,
goes.
there is an example alive like S&P 500, I guess, which is a collection or a bouquet of multiple companies that you can invest in. So you have an average profit yearly from the extreme winning and losses of those multiple companies together.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And so where was I going with all of this to kind of align it with what we were just talking about, right? Was to say that again, we would be better off if versus trusting one market to look at multiple. That's why that question came about there and to ask you about putting in foreign ownership into larger markets, right? Again, diversify not only to diversify your money, but you're again minimizing ultimately the risk for the company, right? Not only your company, but you as an employee. Now, so obviously, because you can see my screen, you already know the answer here. But what I want you to think about is this. I'm going to give you this scenario, and then I'm going to give you, we're going to do some math. Woo! I don't know if you guys like math or not. I'm okay with it, but I prefer the conversation side of the world. Um, so in this particular example, what you're going to see is you're starting with $1,000 that you're going to now invest in stocks. Okay. Now you lose 54% of your investment. Okay. So you're thinking, holy crap. I put $1,000 into this market and I just lost 54% of it. Let me ask you real quick, personally, would you leave your money in or would you pull it out and say, oh, I'm going to cut my losses right now? Who would do that? Anybody? I'm going to take that as a no because nobody responded. Or do you leave it in? And here's why I say that. Here's the second part of that question, or the second half. Well, guess what now? All of a sudden it jumped. You gained 71%. Okay. So how much money do you end up with? And what is your net rate of return? So that's not bad. You've now made some money from it. Now the question is, and here's the example of how to answer that. So you're going to take your $1,000, you're going to multiply it by 1 minus 0.54%. So you have lost $460 of your money, of that $1,000. But you left it in there because nobody said to me that I want to take my money out. I want to leave it there. It went up 71%. So now I'm going to take that $460 I have left, and it's going to go up by 71%, right? Okay. So I'm at $786 now. So your net rate of return was 786 minus $1,000 divided by 1,000, which is negative 21%. Now, my question is, you're still at a loss. Would you guys still leave your money in there, or would you pull out? What are your thoughts?
I will leave my money.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
And why
because
would you?
because if you invest, there's a time for the maturity before you can pull out your money.
Okay, good point. So maturity. Okay, so you're going to lose more if you pull out, right? Because they're
Yeah,
going to take the
because
fee.
if you invest, that means that you stay on the risk, right?
That's right.
You
That's
need
right.
to try to you need to believe.
You
Maybe
need
you
to
win.
believe.
Yeah.
That's right. No, you make a very good point, because guess what the financial or the companies have done to protect themselves? You just mentioned it. So if you said, I'm going to go ahead and pull my money out because I'm down still, well, that company, to protect their investment's going to charge you a fee to pull out your money. So that's one aspect of it. But the second aspect that you just mentioned is, now, guess what? If I leave my money in there and we continue to have those gains in the long run, what's going to happen? I'm going to have more money than I initially invested. Okay. And then if we go to Neuron's example we were talking about a minute ago, okay, now we could look at it and say, so where's that company investing that money that I just put in? Are they investing it in one market? They involved in investing it in, let's say, one market with 10 different companies, or are they going to go into multiple markets with multiple companies? Ultimately, it's, as a company, you want to find out, where is it best to put my money that's going to gain me as a person? Where is it best to put my money that's going to get me a gain? And again, when we talk about it, there is that lovely word of risk, right? Okay. Doom and gloom time. Uh-oh. Not really. All right. So in 2008, 2009 in the US, we had a financial crisis that occurred. Okay. And what happened? What is a financial crisis? So a financial crisis is where your asset prices see a steep decline in value, businesses and consumers are unable to pay debts, and financial institution experience liquidity shortages. A financial crisis is often associated with a panic or a bank run during which investors sell off their assets or withdraw their money because they fear that the value of those assets will drop if they remain. Isn't that what we just talked about? Isn't that just the example I just shared, Julie Lynn? This is what you just talked about. Has anybody ever seen the movie It's a Wonderful Life? It's an old American classic. Anyone? Okay. So in that movie, it's a Christmas movie. There's a gentleman owns a building and loan. Well, guess what happens? A financial crisis in the stock market. It's around stock market crash, basically. All this money starts to, everybody wants to pull their money out. Well, guess what? Again, the example I used earlier, the loan and management company, everybody started to come in and wanted to pull their money out. Well, guess what? He didn't have their money because he had invested all their money into the housing that they were all out now living in. Okay. So he tried to get them to keep their money in. Now, some of them wanted their money. Some of them said, okay, can I get a small loan just to get me over because I don't know what's going to happen. But imagine everybody pulling out what little bit of money they did have in there. What's that going to cause? It's going to cause a crash like happened in the stock market in the 30s. We're much smarter these days. So is a stock market crash going to happen? Probably not. But we still saw this financial crisis occur in 08, 09. Okay. So in the financial crisis, there was regulatory risk and costs of regulation that had to increase and create new laws because of this, because that is what happens, right? It's what happened when the stock market crashed in the late 20s. There had to be new factors and things put into play to help protect people. So, for example, the former Federal Reserve Chairman, Alan Greenspan, believed in only minimal regulation, and his philosophy appeared to prevail at many regulatory agencies, including the SEC. We want to, the laws and rules are there to protect and create behavior. Okay. We need to think about business ethics. We need to think about individual accountability. So, what happened because of the new regulations? Excuse me, I've got a cat now that's meowing in the background. If you hear, I do apologize. The crisis led to what we call the massive Dodd-Frank bill, which was Wall Street Reform Consumer Protection Act, which was designed to limit the systematic risk and tighten controls on institutions that may be to blame for causing financial crisis. The Volcker Rule prohibited insured intermediaries in engaging in proprietary training, owning, or managing a hedge fund or private equity investments. The Volcker Rule was only slowly implemented, though, because banks correctly maintained that many of their proprietary activities are actually hedges to reduce risk. Okay. And it's difficult to separate hedging from speculative based trades. Okay. An unintended consequence of the rule is that in the bond market, as banks reduce their bond trading activities, although details are not clear, it's likely that during the Trump administration, they will potentially roll back those requirements, which could have a negative impact. Now, I'm not getting into politics, but these are the things and factors that come into play with these financial crises. So, maintaining profitability with restricted activity in a continuously evolving, globally competitive market has been a major challenge. The pace of innovation, new technology, financial products and services has not been abated. Technological advances may change traditional methods of offering financial services at the wholesale and perhaps eventually at the retail level. I'm going to give you an example here in a minute. Job opportunities for finance students and for finance students in markets and institutions are likely to continue to improve over the next 10 to 20 years as managing risks at intermediaries is increasingly complex and competitive. Okay. Now, something happened where we had the UK, they left the European Union in 2016. They reduced the value, which reduced the value of the pound and affected global stock markets. Okay, something to look at. Now, most recent shock we had, I'm not going to read word for word. You guys have to excuse me. The most recent shock to the world's financial markets was the coronavirus. We all know about that, resulting in a viral or virtual shutdown of the world economies. The shutdown resulted in a 32% drop in the DJIA in over a month from its all-time high of 29,388.58 down to 19,830 within a month, basically. Okay. So what does all this mean? If we want to think about this, there are going to be financial crises that are going to occur. I'm going to give you a personal experience of one of the things that led to a personal situation. In 2005, which was about 3 years prior to the crisis, I bought a brand new townhome. And with that, this is when there wasn't a lot of regulation on the mortgage lenders, again, i.e. the banks, right? They were happy to lend me money on a home that I realistically should not have been approved to purchase. Okay. You guys will find I'm very authentic. I'm very real when I'm teaching. Sometimes it's better to teach you the don't do what I've done, right? So anyway, I'm thinking, okay, great. I continued to progress in my career. I was making good money. I thought, oh, I'll quickly start making more money. So I bought a house that really shouldn't have been approved for. Lo and behold, 1.5 years later, I moved the family and go to another university and institution to be a higher level, earn more money. But that house that I had purchased, the value wasn't worth what I was lended. I should not have been given that loan. And because of that, I ended up doing what we call a short sale. I didn't have to do a foreclosure, but basically somebody else bought that home for less money than I owed on it. And so that, of course, affected me. That was the risk that I took. But where I'm going with all of that, ultimately, what happened to me, which eventually the company it was with ended up being sued by even the government, and I got money back. But ultimately, because there was no regulations on those lending institutions, millions of Americans were negatively impacted and given loans that they, one, could not afford or should not have been approved to receive, right? All of that plays as a part in 2008 when this happened. Now, the government had to put these laws in place to help continue to protect the people. But ultimately, it now gets to the point where we've got the pandemic that's occurred. So we're going to I guess where I'm going with that, you're going to always see when it comes to that, the up and downs of the world and the finances that occur. One of the pieces that we just talked about in here, where it talked about, where was that piece I was talking about? Okay. So the world changing because of technology is where I was going to go with that. We now, as individuals, have an easier time to create our own companies. We have an easier time to do things where we're not spending money and relying on institutions. How many of you have heard of what we call drop shipping? Are any of you familiar with drop shipping?
I heard about it, but I didn't get into details.
Okay. No, that's great. Thank you, Ahmed. So drop shipping is where me as an individual, let's say, I want to sell a product using today's technology. But I don't want to take the financial risk of one, having to go to the bank, borrow money, and let's say build a warehouse, buy the products, house the products until I can sell them. Well, drop shipping and technology has changed it to the point where we as individuals can work with a company where they're taking that financial risk. They already have the product. All we're doing is selling it for them. So guess what happens? I'm making profit. They're making profit. They already have the product. So I'm kind of that intermediary we're talking about. But where am I going with that? What it does is it allows us to utilize the technology and today's commerce capabilities to minimize our need for some of these financial markets. So that money is not going into those banks. It's more of it's going to us. And that's where I was going to go with that. So here's an activity for you guys. During the financial crisis and afterwards, gold prices skyrocketed. Okay. I want to discuss with you why you think gold prices changed. Is gold always a good investment in uncertain times? And why has gold's performance changed now? So here's what I'd like you to do. There are basically 3 things here I want you to research for me. Give yourself, let's say, until, let's say 5 minutes. I want you to research, okay, why the gold prices skyrocketed during the financial crisis. Why is gold a good investment in uncertain times? And why has gold's performance changed now? So there's 3 pieces to that. Go do some quick research on Google. Let's meet back up in 5 minutes, and I want to hear from you guys because my voice is killing me right now. I'm going to run and grab a drink. I want you guys to research that, and let's talk about it, okay? All right, I'll be right back, guys.
If you allow me, sir.
Yes.
I just this topic I was searching a couple of days ago already. So during the financial crisis, I guess people withdraw their investments in any uncertain investments, and they go to the certain stuff like the gold. So for this reason, buying too much gold in a very limited time makes the gold prices rise up very quickly. We can give an example about what the federal bank did lately when the interest of the bank increase. People go to the banks because they find it more profitable for them. So that make the ounce of gold price dropped. I think from March to August, it dropped from around $1,800 to around $1,600. So this is due to the high interest rate of the bank. So during crisis, when the banks dropped and the stock dropped, so people withdraw their money and go to the certain investments like the gold.
Right. So they went to low risk, right? They wanted to go low risk route. Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. And you bring up a good point. We've seen a couple different things that have happened, and I'm going to use the U.S. market, and actually we could talk about the world market. You guys can share with me if this has happened to any of you. Now that we're coming out of the pandemic, we've seen people going to the housing market has boomed again in the US. And what has occurred? There's not enough inventory. People want to buy a house. So what do you guys think that does to the price of houses? What are your thoughts? There's limited inventory, so what's going to happen?
The prices will go up.
Absolutely simple, right? Prices
There is
will go up.
no supply more.
Exactly. It's a whole that lovely supply demand issue that we talk about. And so what's that done? It's also happened in the car market. In the new car market, sales have gone down because they can't produce cars. Well, actually, the prices have gone up because they can't get the chips that they need for the computers, for the cars, etc. Well, it's been twofold. One, we've seen the price of new vehicles skyrocket, but there also becomes demand for used vehicles. And so now we've got used car prices going up, where you've got used vehicles in some cases costing as much, if not more, than a new vehicle. So it comes down to, again, supply demand. What do you think is one other thing in the US that we're seeing based on supply and demand, which this all does play a part into what we're talking about? We're talking about the financial institutions and the pricing, right? And we'll align them here in a second. Well, what is something, Judy Lynn, you can speak to this, even maybe being in Canada, but what is something that we've seen where prices have quote unquote skyrocketed that you can think about? What are your thoughts? And maybe that's too much of a broad question.
Pardon me, can you repeat the question?
Yeah. So where have we seen in, I'm going to say North America, in both US and Canada, quick rising costs that are potentially related to the financial markets? Where have we seen a steep increase?
Today, because we are now recovering from the pandemic.
The pandemic's one, but
Yeah,
here's where yeah, go ahead.
After we recover, what I can see is the increasing now is the house value.
House values, yes. We
Yeah,
talked
like
about that.
the rent, it goes lost during the pandemic, but now they're returning it back to the normal.
Right.
But during the pandemic, the tickets for travel is too high, but now they are getting it low for the normal also, because there's no one seat apart, or that there's no 2 meters. There's no social distance now. That's what I observed today, because mostly we travel. Like now, I'm in the harbor, so it's very noisy. My hotel is near the harbor in Nanaimo. I can see that the ticket now is affordable, not like before that it's so much expensive.
Okay, very good. So one area that affects the financial market that has occurred in the US is we're going through that period of inflation right now, the rise of food costs. What's caused that? What's one of the biggest factors? Oil and gas industry. Okay. Now, with the oil and gas industry pricing, now that Russia has just announced they are cutting back barrel production, we were starting to see slowly in the US prices come down, but now they're going to go back up again. And that's a big issue, because in the US we rely a lot on transportation to get to and from. So it's a trickle down effect. But so, okay, what does all that have to do with the financial market? Well, obviously, it's that scarcity. It's that how do we as banks, where we have all of this money invested into certain areas, continue to flow without increasing interest rates to minimize our risk, to earn money. So again, it's all cyclical. It's all flow. Now, did anybody else? I know Noran, you gave a good overview of gold. Did anybody do any research on gold? And what are your thoughts about the activity we just talked about? Okay. All right. Let's go into money markets. So money markets have evolved to meet short-term investment needs. So they are 1 year or less type of investments. So corporations and institutions desiring can earn small positive rates of return on cash that would be needed shortly. So they've evolved with high denomination of safe securities and have little risk of principal loss. Capital markets are markets where borrowers raise cash for long-term investments. These are generally riskier than money markets. Hence, capital market securities must promise to pay a higher rate of return to attract funds. Savers willing to take associated risk are attracted to these markets. So the money market is in short-term debt. Constant cash flow between governments, corporations, banks, and financial institutions. Borrowing and lending for a term as short as overnight, no longer than a year. Okay. Capital markets, they encompass the trade in both stocks and bonds. These are long-term assets bought by financial institutions, professional brokers, and individual investors, right? All right. So if I was to give you an example to break it down a little further, for us as an individual, and I go to my bank, what is a short-term way for me to maybe earn a small amount of return? Does anybody know? Does anybody have an example? What is something I could go get at my bank that's going to cause me to earn money, but it's low risk, not a loan, but what is something I can put my money in at the bank that's going to get me a quick return or relatively quick return and earn me money? Does anybody know?
Define short term, like 1 year or
Yeah, let's
month.
talk. Let's put a period on that. Let's say we're talking 12 months to 24 months. How about that?
Then I believe a saving bond will be the best option. It will save money. It will give me an acceptable benefit rate,
Okay.
and it is short term. It is 1 year to 3 years.
There you go. Right? Okay. Now, the other thing we could look at is what we call a CD, right? That's short term. That can get quick reward. But again, our earning potential is very low because there's minimal risk on it. Savings accounts, right? Now those are long term, but they can be. But do most people put money in savings forever? Not a lot, because there's a low return on it. So Ahmed, we put money, we might put a savings bond, okay, to get that quick return. But of course, what are the banks doing? They're putting their money into those, again, long-term bonds, the stock market, etc. Okay, that's very good example that you shared there. So here's what I want you guys to do. Again, I'm trying to get you guys involved in this product, in this process. I want you to locate current promised interest rates on 3 money market instruments and promised rates of return on 2 capital market instruments. Okay. And I want us to discuss it, the difference together. And I want to discuss your findings. So this one's going to take you just a couple minutes. Okay. Please. So let's take about 5 to 10 minutes on this particular one. Norrin, you might be ahead of us because you're good at this. But for the others, let's take 5 to 10 minutes. I want you to locate, using Google, current promised interest rates on 3 money market instruments and promised rates of return on 2 capital market instruments. And then we're going to discuss the differences in the findings. Okay? Give me just a moment. I will be right back. You guys, I can't wait for this discussion because I want to get some feedback from you guys. Okay? All right. I'll be right back. Okay? Okay, how's the research coming?
Sorry, sir, but can you explain more about the question because it is difficult to understand?
Yes. Okay. So again, we're looking at short-term debts for money market, right? We're talking about where between governments, corporations, banks, financial institutions, where the borrowing and the lending is for a short-term period, right? It could be overnight and no longer than a year. So what you're looking for is with this particular piece, what are right now 3 money market accounts or tools that companies, governments, banks, and financial institutions are utilizing, right? What are the interest rates for them? What are they promising from those interest rates, right? What type of return? And then go and look at capital markets, which again, which is stocks and bonds, where companies can look at putting money into, and what are some of the promised rates of return for those? Okay, so is Edward Jones promising that they're going to give me X number rate of return on my investment of my money into their stocks? What kind of fees? What am I looking to get? Does that make sense? Does that clarify a little bit?
Oh, so
No.
Terry, so your question
Okay.
is like this? Like I invest, right? I invest money, and there's after they promise me, that company promised me that after 20 years, I'll get a monthly pension, a health uh, a health pass for the rest of my life. That's is that your question, sir? That's how.
We still cannot hear you.
You guys, hang on. That's
Now,
my
now we hear you.
Okay, good. I should have done that earlier. I was trying to put my headsets in because the dogs were barking at something. So I do apologize. So let's look at this together. Okay. So I want to look at the interest rates on 3 money market interests. Okay. And I'm glad we're doing this together. I should have probably done this earlier. So I do apologize. So let me go to Google real quick. You guys can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to look at current interest. Okay, let's see here. So if we were to look at current short-term interest rates by country, yep, not what I want. I'm trying to find us the best example to use. Okay, so let's look here. Okay. So if we were to look at an example, this is going to be an example because we don't have the time to go through all of this. But if I was to say, I'm a bank, I'm a government entity, I want to get an interest rate on, let's say, for my bank. I need to borrow. I want to get what's going to get me the best return real quick. What kind of rates am I looking at? I'll use me as an example. If I was a person, not a company, but if I wanted to get a short-term interest rate, I could look at like American Express, and my return, and again, I'm using this as an example. My return could be anywhere from 6.98% to 19.97. Okay.
So just to clear things, okay?
Yes.
If I put the money, like I have excess money, let's say $1,000, if
Yes.
in a bank, okay, I will get this percent rate, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And here we are talking about what kind of account I will put this $1,000 in. Am I right?
Correct.
So if I'm going
Yes.
to use a long-term bond or a saving account or what it was, there is third one.
Yes.
Which is,
Reserve.
I got the idea.
Yeah. So in this case, if I'm looking at a money
Yes.
market, if I'm looking at a money market account, right? Let's say Capital One. You guys can see my screen, right? So they're claiming that their rate of return is 2.2%. So over a year, you could be $550 rate of return. Again, this is just a short-term example, but it's exactly what you were just talking about. Okay. It's me saying that after 12 months of putting my money in, this is what I can expect to gain of putting that in. That's my potential rate of return, right? Now, if I was to look at capital market, let's look at the capital market. Okay, let's see what this one has for us. Okay, so here's a company, right? That's saying that if you invest with my company long term, you're going to earn up to 20% of an annualized return. We're going to help you diversify against a volatile stock market with uncorrelated returns. You're going to get unrivaled liquidity with deals that mature in months, not years. And if you were to invest today, you're going to earn $500 just for making an investment. So we're saying, hey, I'm going to give you money just for investing with us. Do you think that's physical money they're going to give you? No, they're going to put it into the market. So what we're trying to do here is we're saying that not you or me, but this is where the banks, the companies, the investors, we're putting our money into the long term. Hence the capital market, because we're trying to keep that money flowing. Okay. Now, what's an average stock market return? And we talked about this a little bit earlier, right? If I'm putting in and I know that my money is going to be in there for a long time, I'm keeping it there, that the average stock market return is about 10%. So if I was to put that money in, that's what I'm going to be expecting to get. That's where we were kind of going with this particular example. All right. Now, let's talk about foreign exchange markets. A majority of the world's businesses involve international business transactions. It's increasingly important for the firms to recognize that the best investment opportunity may be located in continental Europe. The lowest cost source of funds may be found in Britain instead of the US, or the highest potential sales growth rate may be in Asia. So as a corporation, we have to learn and have increased international transactions. Now, foreign exchange risks has become a major source of risk. Okay. And as much as hedging with spot and forward foreign exchange trades occur. Again, more trades, more risk potentially involved. So, historically, when a nation's current account deficit surpasses 5% of its gross domestic product, a correction occurs in the value of that currency. So, before the financial crisis in the US, we were able to consistently run current account deficits above 5% because foreigners were willing to supply funds to the US markets. Part of the reason for this is the usage of the US dollar as a global reserve currency. Our currency.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, sir, I need to go. I'm sorry.
Okay. That's okay. That's okay. Thank you for being here. I will see you. Remember, we're going to start Monday sessions upcoming Monday. Okay.
Okay.
So
thank you very much.
Yes, you're very welcome.
Have a lovely discussion.
Thank
Bye, guys. Bye, classmates.
Bye-bye. Okay. So part of the reason for the US dollar is very high in the global reserve currency. So currency manipulation by foreign central banks also has contributed to the strength of the dollar. For example, foreign central banks continue to purchase dollars to keep local currencies down for their export sectors. The US economy and the dollar remains a key generator of global growth, and these factors help the dollar maintain its value in the global market. Now, the strength of the dollar since the Great Recession has reduced profitability in some of our multinational revenues, such as IBM. Coca-Cola's sales expose company to nearly 70 different foreign currencies, exposing the company to flat or decreasing net quarter sales in countries with currencies that are weak compared to our dollar. So, what does this all mean? So, what this does is this means that when we are investing our money as a company or a person even into a market, we have to look at which market are we putting our money in? What is not only a rate of return we could be looking at investing in, but we got to look at the value of their dollar. Okay. So, for example, with the crisis that's happened between Russia and the Ukraine, the ruble has plummeted. So the value is not there, right? So if I'm an investor, do I want to put my money into that market, or do I keep it somewhere where the value of the currency is high, right? So let's ask this question. It may sound like a weird question, but Ahmed, what's the value of the currency where you are now?
Well, it is it's 280 dinar. So the value of it compared to what? Compared to the US dollar?
Let's compare it to the US dollar. Yes.
Oh.
And you don't have to be exact. You could just estimate it or guesstimate. I mean, again, is your value of your dollar
120 120? It is going up because it's 120 dinar. It was $3.23.
Okay. Wow. So if I was the investor, would I want to invest in the companies or your exchanges versus the US market? Potentially, yes, right? Because your dollar's worth more.
Potentially, yes.
Right?
Exactly.
Absolutely. So that's what we're looking at here. How about you, Naran? Where you're located, what's the value? Do you know?
Actually, in Egypt here, the $1 equal 19.6 Egyptian pound official.
Okay. So, okay, is that up or down from what it's been? And yeah, I have to ask because I don't know the exchange rates.
Sorry, can you repeat the question again?
Yeah, so because I don't know the exchange rates, is that value of yours up or is that down from what it used to be compared to the US dollar?
Actually, at the latest times, we are
Mhm.
experiencing an increase of the value of USD dollar compared to the Egyptian pound.
Okay.
So actually, it started to be, I guess, at 2007 with $1 equals 6 to 7 Egyptian pounds. Then at 2016, it was equivalent to 16 Egyptian pounds, and then we are rising up to 19.6, and I think by the end of the year it will be about 21.
Okay. Okay, very good. So can you see that correlation of where would you want it? So then using that information, Naran, would you want to put your money or your company's money into the US market, or would you prefer to keep it into your market? Where's your best value going to be?
Of course, U.S. market
Mhm.
for the current situation, because the value of the dollar compared to my value of money, it is increasing. So investing in U.S. dollars will be better, of course.
Yes, very good. Okay, that's wonderful. All right. Let's see. All right, so let's see here. Okay, let's talk about derivatives. So a derivative security, it's a contract which derives its value from underlying assets and market conditions. So in general, the main purpose of the derivative is to transfer risk between market participants. Okay. Some participants, the hedgers, enter into these contracts to reduce their risk exposure into the underlying cash market. Other individuals, the speculators, use these contracts to bet on price movements. So, derivatives are very highly leveraged. Okay. This allows hedgers to reduce their risk and speculators to attempt to earn high rates of return with low capital investment. The two types of derivatives and the market for exchange traded derivatives and the over-the-counter derivative markets. Exchange traded derivatives are generally liquid and involve no counterparty risk, whereas the over-the-counter contracts are custom contracts negotiated between two counterparties that have default risk. Now, derivatives have been blamed for part of the financial crisis. Remember, I shared my situation with mortgages. So mortgage derivatives did allow a larger number of mortgage credits to be created and spread the risk of the mortgage to broader base of investors. So those subprime mortgage losses were in large, reaching over $700 billion. So do we blame the instrument or do we blame the user? Now, Warren Buffett called derivatives weapons of mass destruction. However, used properly, they allowed market participants to transfer risk to other parties and allowed others lower cost methods to gain exposure to the markets. It's reasonable to require that greater transparency in over-the-counter derivatives ensure that players can cover their promises that they make. Okay. So let's talk about a hedger. A hedger is a person that invests in financial markets to reduce price volatility, excuse me, in exchange markets. They try to eliminate the risk of future price movements. Speculators and speculation are the most common market activity that participants of financial market take. Again, it's riskier because you're forecasting essentially. Okay. You're purchasing a financial instrument or an asset that an investor speculated to become significantly valuable in the future. And again, I'm going to end up sending you notes, but I'll let you read through these. So as you can see, there's a lot of different things we could talk about. The best way I can put this is that, again, that hedger wants to get in, but they want to minimize their risk in the market. Okay. That speculator is saying, hey, we see that there's a positive here that's going to continue to occur. I'm going to use a budget for an example. When I create a budget, my goal is to say that I'm forecasting that if I make X number of sales, my earnings going to be this. And I have the potential, after I take all my expenses out of there, to have XYZ in revenue. Okay. Now, I am speculating that I'm going to have this, and it's all based on sale. Okay. So let's go back to that housing market example. I shared my personal experience. Say that Fannie Mae, which is a lender, right, in real estate, or was, said, I've got 20 people like Terry that I need to give money to, and I need to earn from that money. So guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to speculate that Terry can't afford this house right now, but in the future, his money level is going to change, so he's going to be able to afford it. So you know what? I'm going to take a risk on him. Now, this is where deceptive lending practices occurred, because they were speculating that this was going to happen, that they were going to get these big old rates of return. So what did they do? Their investor said, hell yeah, excuse my language. The investor said, heck yeah, here's my earning potential from this. I'll take my risk and I'll work with you. And what was Fannie Mae doing? They knew that they were giving loans to people that they should not have in order to make the investors happy. Ultimately, it brought to their downfall because they were deceptively showing returns, speculating returns to their investors. So imagine that. I'm the guy that bought the house, but let's say I had also put my money into investing in that company. I lost twice. I was given a home, shouldn't have had, But as an investor, I put my money into a home, or excuse me, a company that gave me that loan, expecting them to be doing it on the up and up. Okay. So when we're looking at that speculation, that's where we're looking at that. Does that make sense? You guys there? Uh-oh. You guys being
Yes, we are
quiet?
here.
Okay. Did that, Ahmed, did that example make sense of what we were just talking about?
Well, it needs a lot of work, to be honest.
Okay. It needs a lot of
See,
work.
my issue here is I, English is not my first language, so a lot of
Yep.
words are new for me, especially in this course.
Okay.
So I'm trying my best to grab things.
Okay. I'm glad you're letting me know that, because that means that's something that I've got to remember as I'm teaching this course. I've got to do a better job of, and I appreciate you being honest and upfront with me. That means I need to do a better job for you in putting the terminology into a manner that can be understood. That's not on you, that's on me. I'm going to give you an example. When I was what we called a financial aid director at a college in the US, I had a tendency to use the terminology that was common to me, but then I had to think about the fact of how do I explain it. So I promise you, Ahmed, I'll try to do a much better job for you with that. Okay.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay. So let's move focus to financial market regulation. Now, after the crisis occurred, after everything has happened, the financial markets said, we got to come in and do a better job. We've got to make sure that there are practices in place that these things don't happen. And that's why the regulations have come about. So financial markets are now regulated by the SEC, the exchanges, the Commodities Future Trading Commissions, and Financial Industry Regulatory Body. Okay. And now, as you can see, that means there are many entities now causing regulations or overseeing things to try to minimize issues that occur. The FINRA that we just mentioned is a self-regulatory body. It's subject to SEC oversight. The purpose of the regulations are to prevent fraud, to ensure promise and performance, and to ensure that the public has enough information to evaluate the riskiness of an investment. So the regulators do not attempt to ensure that investors earn a minimum rate of return. Now, if I can kind of give you an example, again, I come from the world of higher ed. When I enroll a student, I came from what we would call the career education world. So what I'm teaching you now, what I was teaching my students then, or what my instructors were teaching the students, was meant to lead to a career, a job. One of the things that used to happen was the sales team would promise students that when they finished their program, there would be a job waiting for them. Well, we can't promise that. That is not always a guarantee, because yes, we can give knowledge to somebody. We can give them the capabilities to be able to go out and get a job. But there are some factors that we don't control, i.e., you as a person, that could be keeping you from getting a job. So, how does that all relate? Well, you have to have regulations in place in order for the person, whether it be you or me as an individual borrower, a company that's borrowing, from being misled. Again, hence the lending practices that were occurring in the housing market. Okay. So, a well functioning financial system is vital for the economy, business, and consumer. Regulation is part of ensuring that safety, but what does it mean in practice? Okay. So, when we're talking about in practice, regulation, financial regulation, refers to the rules and laws operating in the industry, the banks, the credit union, insurance companies, any of the business where money's exchanging hands. However, financial regulations is more than just having rules, it's also ongoing oversight. So, for example, the Central Bank of Ireland regulates and supervises 10,000 financial service providers that are operating in Ireland. Since 2014, the responsibility of supervising those banks has been shared between that central bank and the European Central Bank. Okay. Most laws that govern financial systems are made by politicians in the House of the, I can't pronounce that word, the Oireachtas, or the European Union. The central bank oversees the rules and are complied with, sometimes issuing additional guidance. Okay. Now, they've increased and strengthened the rules since the financial crisis. Okay. So, why is the financial regulation important? So, we all depend on financial systems in one way or another. Savers rely on banks to have the money available when they need it, right? Us. Businesses need to be able to borrow to maintain and develop their business. Again, if I needed to, for my business, go to borrow money, I need to make sure there are regulations in place that are going to protect me. So consumers taking out a mortgage or insurance may need to get advice on the best product for them. In case of insurance companies, policyholders rely on getting claims paid when something goes wrong. Okay. An example. We just had a hurricane in the US. There's much of Florida that was devastated from that. Those persons living in Florida need to make sure that there is money in those banks, that the insurance companies have money invested in to be able to pay out to them based on their needs to replace their homes, vehicles, what have you. So again, remember I talked about that whole flow situation. It's, forgive the Lion King reference, but it's a circle of life. It's all cyclical. It flows out of our pockets into the company that we bought it from. That company borrowed that money from that institution. That institution got its money from you or me or investors. And that investor is, of course, somebody that's put money back in. So it's, again, all circular, but there has to be a way to make sure that it's all aligned and regulated to protect everyone, honestly. Okay. So all of us depend on it. Or excuse me, I just talked about that. If it's poorly regulated, the institutions have a potential to undermine the stability, harm the consumer, and damage the prospects for the economy. That's why strong regulation is important. And I just shared that example. So how do the financial regulations work? So ensuring that the firms have the funding to trade safely, they have the appropriate risk in place, the controls, excuse me, and they're appropriately governed is known as prudential regulation. Ensuring that firms treat customers fairly, from the sale processes to how complaints are managed, is known as consumer protection. And an important part of prudential regulation is authorization, excuse me. We call this our gatekeeper role, and it means we only allow firms to operate in the financial system once they have fulfilled a number of criteria, including governance and risk control. So again, you and I, we can't go to our bank to borrow money unless we can show evidence that we are going to have the ability to repay that loan. The same thing goes on with companies and financial institutions. It's a protection factor. Okay. Consumer protection rules are in place. These spell out how firms must treat customers when selling them financial products. Example, a firm must ensure that it acts honestly, fairly, and professionally in the best interests of its customers. Okay? Just like me, as your professor, as your instructor, I have to be honest, I have to be fair, I have to be professional, because I am acting in the best interest of Windsor University. And that's exactly what the regulations are doing in the financial industry. Okay. What do you think, based on this information, what do you think are some of the types of risk that financial institutions are facing today? And this is a very broad question, I understand. We've had a lot of conversation today. What do you think are some of the risks that banks are facing or could be exposed to? What do they have to take into consideration to operate? Thoughts? Comments?
Losing faith of the common people in the financial system.
Okay, that's a great one. Yes.
And at the same way, and on the other hand, whoever borrowed money or took loans from them suffer losses due to the economic situation and is not able to pay back what they got, and also what they have the loan the people who took loans, their assets or what they call their guarantees become less in value.
Very good. That's great. All great examples. I love it. I love it. You're exactly right. So Yeah. The bank's not going to make money, the financial institution, if you don't trust them and you're not putting your money in them. Because if you're not putting your money in them, that means that's money that they're not investing to make money for themselves or you to pay the interest dividends that they owe you, right? Or to be able to lend that money to your neighbor down the street to buy a new home. So when they lose that faith, you're right, because I'm going to take my business elsewhere. You're right. When we can't pay that back, that money we've borrowed because of, again, let's say I'm going to use inflation again in the US as an example. As inflation occurs, that's less spending money I have from my pocket, which means I'm going to make the decision, let's say, of do I pay that loan or do I pay my electric bill and keep that on? That's a risk that financial institutions take when inflation occurs. So how do they offset that? One, fees, which goes back to your first point. When people don't trust it because they've raised the fees, they may take their business elsewhere. Okay. And you're right, the guarantees become less. Very, very cool. I like that, Ahmed. Thank you for giving those examples because it allows me to expand upon that. So I love that. Thanks. Okay. So
Also, Nuran mentioned something in the chat box.
Oh, let me see. Let me see. I'm so sorry. Thank you. Thank you. I forget sometimes the chat box. Robs by, yeah, creditors whom borrow big values. Yes. Compared to, I agree with you completely on that. So let me see here. Yes, very good point. Thank you, Nuran. And occurs due to internal corruptions. Yes, absolutely. Again, good point is what happened here in the U.S. with the mortgage lenders, right? You know, and it's very interesting because there's a lot of things that is being discussed in the U.S. government when it comes to stock market right now. Don't know if you're familiar, but there are several individuals in our stock market that obviously, again, create rules and laws for the United States as a system that have made a lot of money off the stock market. And there's been a lot of conversation about what we would call insider trading. Different course, different, different topic, but it still plays a part in regulation. And so now there's been a new bill proposed that would keep the members of government from being able to trade stocks. And because, again, they deal with these individuals. Why is that important? Why am I sharing that? Because if you think about the financial institutions, why do they want to get these big contracts with the government? Because there could be potentially those investors that should not be allowed to, that are causing them to earn the money, right? So it's a lot of that corrupt piece that you were just talking about, Ron. So thank you. That's a very big thing right now. Let's talk about the financial institutions. Okay. We already know, we've talked about, those are the ones who deal in the monetary transactions, deposits, loans, investments, currency exchange. Anybody virtually, or virtually everyone living in a developed economy has an ongoing, or at least periodic, need for services of financial institutions. Rarely do you find anybody that doesn't utilize banks, especially now that we live in a technological society where most transactions are being done by debit and credit card, right? The more you see less and less people using cash. Not that it doesn't happen, but you're seeing it less. Financial institutions, the companies engaged in the business dealings. Now, they can vary by size, scope, and geography as far as the type of institutions. Now, many savers today are willing to risk some of their funds in capital markets, but not all of them. For at least some of their wealth, savers typically desire a different type of claim than the ultimate borrower wishes to offer. Asset transformers, such as banks, have evolved to meet the need by offering low risk claims to savers while granting higher risk, more illiquid investment, i.e., loans, to the fund demanders. Other types of institutions have evolved to meet special needs of the savers, such as life insurance firms, to eliminate certain risks, pension funds, to transfer wealth through time, money market mutual funds, to pool investors, savings, etc. Again, I shared a little earlier in the class that we as an employee, when our, we can put our money into different companies that take care of our investments. Well, there's also has to be regulation on them, right? But you are seeing now, interestingly enough, individuals using a life insurance policy where they can put money into that policy, but because that's earning interest towards the day that unfortunately we pass, there's money that can be borrowed against at some point, whether there's a fee associated with it or not once we reach a certain age. But those are the type of pieces that people rely on and not just the banks. Now, I'm not going to go through all of the types of institutions. We're running out of time. We're at 15 minutes after. So I'm going to move past that right now. Okay, let's talk about, actually, let's just do a quick student activity. I would like you guys to use the following data. I'll put it in the chat box for you. The federalreserve.gov. Using the internet, find the flow of funds for each of the following intermediates. I want you to identify the largest type of investment security, excluding loans. Explain why you believe each of these intermediaries has chosen this investment type. So again, what I'm asking is, forget banks. What I want you to do, look at pension funds, commercial banks, life insurers, property and casualty insurers. 2, from the website that I shared, I want you to explain why you believe each of these these types of tools are chosen by individuals to invest in. Take about 5 minutes. Ahmed, is that clear what I'm looking for, or do I need to clarify anymore? Am I good?
It is clear, but I'll start searching.
What's that?
I will start searching. I mean,
okay. Well, the good news is I'm only having you go to one site. You don't have to do Google search. Go to federalreserve.gov.
Went on and I put the first thing, which is pension funds. But what you want exactly is see how it's what's the circle of it or what?
Okay, so what we're going to look for, let's look at the document again here. Each of the following Identify the largest type. Find the flow of funds here. Okay.
Actually, from my side, I know about two of this list, about the pension funds and
Okay.
the life insurance. As I think we have passed by at the accounting and finance at the past semester that the reference mentioned that usually the pension fund of the companies and the life insurance is always invested at the stock market, usually at a collection of stocks from different companies and types to give a guarantee on average high interest for the company, so it can return this money to the employees with a big values.
That's correct. Yes. So that is where we're what we were kind of looking for. So exactly. You're on the right part. So I appreciate that. Now, what I'm going to do, because we're down to 10 minutes, I didn't get to go through the entire presentation. I do apologize. But obviously, again, I will share with you guys some of this information. I'll go through and adapt it a little bit, but I'm going to share this with you in the Moodle. Okay. I also have, of course, again, chapter 2 in Moodle with the true false questions, which, by the way, with the true false questions, I typed them up into a Word document for chapter 2 for you to be able to answer, because I did notice that one of your classmates said, hey, we can't see the entire question in the PDF. So I do apologize for that, but I have done that. What I'd like to do, because we have 10 minutes left, this was our first class together, and I want to make sure, one, again, as a servant leader, I am giving you the tools, the information, and understanding of the material that we're covering. So, Ahmed, I appreciate earlier you shared with me the terminology, which is something that means I need to work on. What are some other things to make this material more easily understandable for you that you would like me to cover in the upcoming class sessions? And you can be open and honest. I don't take offense to it. I want to make sure I'm doing everything you need.
Examples more than reading.
Okay, some more examples.
I mean,
okay.
Reading, we have already the book.
Yes.
And we will read it, but sorry for the background.
No, that's fine. Okay, less reading to you guys. Okay, I appreciate that. I do. Okay. So I will do better for you there. All right. And I wasn't sure. So you guys do you all read the are you guys reading the assignments in the text as far as the chapters? Or are you skimming through them? How are you guys best absorbing the material? What works best for you guys when it comes to your texts? Do you skim? Norn, what?
Like, okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Skim like reading fast, you mean?
Yeah. Did you do that before today's session?
Well, I didn't. I'm talking about myself. I didn't.
Okay. That's fair enough. Because again, I want to make sure that I'm not boring you. Okay, if anything. And honestly, Ahmed, again, I love your authenticity. And I like that if you're feeling I'm reading too much, that's cool. I appreciate that. That means I need to do a better job with the material I'm covering for you, especially when it comes to that discussion side of things. Noran, what can I do better for you for the upcoming classes?
From my side, actually, the class was interesting.
Okay.
We have good discussions. We can. The only thing that it is not about too much reading, but maybe the document cause some distraction because we have to read it while we are hearing Your Excellency.
Yeah.
So I guess we can use material in the background with a simpler wording, so our full attention will be
For the
with
PowerPoints.
what you see, what you are saying. That will be
Yeah.
better to hear you instead of reading the document, of course.
It's distracting. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Very good. Hello? Oh, I thought I heard somebody there. No, thank you for that. Okay, very good, very good. Um, Anything that you would like clarity on before we end the session, as far as the material we covered? Is there anything that wasn't quite clear that we could go back over for you?
Prof, I have a suggestion. It is out of the session topic, of course, but
Okay,
it would be good if we had a discussion later on about the crisis of 2008
okay,
and the more stuff, because actually I have gone deep in this topic multiple times, but I didn't understand neither any time of them, never. And even
yeah,
movies were not helpful for me too. So it will be good if we had, even in WhatsApp chat discussion, or you
okay,
provide documents, simple documents to explain the situation. That will be good. Thank
yeah.
you.
Oh, absolutely. Now, it's interesting because, again, being from a higher education world, when the crisis happened in 2008, 2009, we saw an increase in enrollments in higher education. Well, why did we see that? Because companies were closing, and so people needed retraining to go to jobs. An example, I live in Ohio, and the area I live in is primarily automotive manufacturing. Well, as the companies were having to close manufacturing facilities, they by law had to pay for retraining of some of their individuals. So we saw that increase. But again, the financial crisis led to companies closing. Same thing that has happened with the pandemic. But I definitely agree with you, Noran. It's a very important piece, and we don't want to repeat history. So I will definitely share that with you guys. I'll add some information, and we can have a discussion in WhatsApp. I love that. But I definitely, from my industry, saw an increase in revenue because we saw more students coming in. But again, it was unfortunate to see the number of people, especially in the area where I was located, being negatively impacted with jobs. And the pandemic has kind of done the same thing in some respects. Now, the government, just like they did in 2008, 2009, they bailed some of the industries, i.e., banks, car, auto manufacturers, etc., out. We saw that with what we call PPE loans, um, in during the pandemic, to try to put money back into the economy to stimulate while people were kind of stuck at home. But there's been some negative aspects to it as well, but they're not so much related to this particular subject and this course. So, but absolutely, I will definitely add something to that. Any last pieces from you guys before we go ahead and end today's session? Okay. Well, I want to thank you guys. I will continue for you to improve on the information I'm giving you and providing. If you have any questions about the assignments that are due for week 1, feel free to send me a private message through WhatsApp. If you don't want to send it to the group, that's cool. Send me an email. I get my email both to obviously the computer, but also my phone. So I will get any emails you send to me. And that's how I would like you to, for the first week, submit your assignments until I get some more things ironed out with the Moodle platform. So yes, I appreciate you guys. I love having you in class. I love the interaction. You're welcome. And I look forward to seeing you guys Monday, okay? So please have a good weekend and take care of yourselves.
Thank you, Professor.
All right.
Have a good
Bye-bye.
weekend.